How's it going, guys? It's Kass. As always, if you've been enjoying my content, then feel free to subscribe. Seems like finally we've actually have some positive news when it comes to Demon Hunter. Feels like it's been a while since we've been able to say that. And I'm happy to announce that Chaos Theory got a significant buff today. And we have some interesting changes with soulbinds, as well as some adjustments when it comes to covenant abilities. First thing that we're going to talk about is the changes to Chaos Theory. Chaos Theory now says Blade Dance has a 30% chance to grant you chaotic blades, increasing your damage of chaos by 50%, and its chance to refund fury by additional 60% for 8 seconds. So we have a 3 times increase in proc chance and a double in the amount of damage throughput that the legendary does. This is a significant buff and pushes this legendary to potentially the best legendary that we have, but at least in competition with Fell Bombardment and Collective Anguish. This change is very good, and barring testing, it may become the best option for legendaries. When we just think about it, a 50% damage increase to Chaos Strike is massive, and a 30% chance to get this in that window of 20%, or in that window of 20, where we'd be normally getting 2 procs, we're now getting 6 procs. So it's significantly better. And if you want to learn more about how Chaos Theory works and the inner workings of the legendary, I'd go ahead and watch my last video about Chaos Theory. The link's going to be in the description below. With that video, I have now put in the description basically saying the changes have changed the damage numbers, but everything else is the exact same. So obviously the damage numbers are going to be significantly better, but you can get a general idea of how that legendary is going to perform and how the legendary functions. This next change is an indirect buff to Essence Break. However, obviously Essence Break is in a very competitive talent row, so it most likely won't be taken, but this change did make Essence Break better. I just wanted to make that important before we actually talk about it. Dancing with Fate used to be Blade Dance has a 5% chance to apply Essence Break, and that went up all the way to, I believe, a 20% chance to apply Essence Break. So it got to a point where you were getting Essence Break from your Blade Dances almost as often as you were getting it from just pressing the button, and that's a lot of the reason why it felt obsolete to take that talent. Now what Dancing with Fate does is it actually addresses some of the issues I had in the changes I want to see in Shadowlands video, with Blade Dance not being a button that you want to press if you aren't playing First Blood, Trial of Ruin. If you're playing that, you're going to want to always be pressing Blade Dance. However, if you don't choose those options, pressing Blade Dance actually feels like a pretty bad situation. With the changes to Chaos Theory, and also in conjunction with the changes in this potency conduit, I feel like there will be a lot more playability with Blade Dance. This potency conduit makes it so the last slash of Blade Dance deals an additional 10% damage. I believe Blade Dance is like around 5 or 8 total slashes. I might be wrong with that, but I think it's somewhere in that range. So it's not a 24% increased damage at max rank, 10% damage at first rank situation. It's more of like a 2 or 3% overall damage increase with Blade Dance. However, that 2 or 3% does make it at least on par with Chaos Strike, so it doesn't feel as bad of pressing Blade Dance. So then in those situations where there's like 2 targets, it makes it a lot more worth it to press Blade Dance over Chaos Striking. The next change is a new potency conduit, Relentless Onslaught. This used to be the damage amp for Demon's Bite, which actually makes it so the new legendary that they just released is actually worse, now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more. But this used to say it increased the damage of Demon's Bite by 5%, and I believe it went up to like 25%. Now it says Chaos Strike has a 5% chance to trigger a second Chaos Strike, and it goes all the way up to a 14.5% chance. This is basically the equivalent to Inner Demons minus the slam that does AoE damage baked into a conduit. Now obviously 5%, and even at 14.5%, it doesn't happen very often, but it still is able to happen a decent amount. And this is the button that we're pressing the most and want to be pressing the most. So getting that extra proc is pretty nice. Also, we don't know yet, but if this proc has a chance to refund on top of it, it's extremely good. And if it does have that chance, the combination of Chaos Theory plus this conduit plus Cycle of Hatred is going to feel incredibly fun. Like, imagine you're pressing 6 Chaos Strikes in a row, they're all refunding, and then of those like 6, 2 of them get a double, and that also refunds. You're literally going to have an instant refresh on I-Beam. That would feel so good. And then we have some slight nerfs to Serrated Glaive. I felt Serrated Glaive was a complete no-brainer. Everyone was probably going to be taking it, especially when Collective Anguish was the best legendary, and potentially still is the best legendary. It's all going to be testing. But this is just a slight change, making it a little bit worse on the end game, but for the most part, it's the exact same and still a very good conduit option. Next, we're going to move into some general changes, and this is going to be some of the covenant balances and the soul binds for covenants. The first of which is a nerf to Sinful Brand. This is something that I actually called for because Sinful Brand was at a point where it was just the best one to take and there was really no other options, especially after I learned from some people in the comments talking about how haste actually works with dots. And basically that is equating to Sinful Brand doing like 20 or 30% more damage than just the flat numbers that we're seeing. So that this change actually gets it closer to the 520% with the base haste that we already have. So realistically, this change is just bringing it down to the level that they thought it was at, while also accounting for the haste that we're getting as demon hunters. And I think the really interesting part is when we get into these conduits, you're going to see what this actually means for Demon Hunter as a whole. And I want to be clear, all of these changes are subject to change still. None of this is set in stone. There's probably going to be a million changes by the time we actually get these in our hands. And then once we get them in our hands, they're probably going to change too. So I wouldn't like replaying out all of your Shadowlands experience because of this video and because of these changes, but they're just something to think about. Next, we have Brooding Pool. That's talking about Father of the Flame. Father of the Flame, as I know, is still garbage, so I'm not even going to talk about that. Growing Inferno, slight damage increase to Immolation Aura damage. Nothing too crazy. It's still pretty good. Sinful Brand got its potency conduit reduced. So the max cooldown reduction that you're going to get is 48 seconds down from, or up from 45 seconds, which is what it was at max rank. However, the flat base reduction is now 5, and that was actually 1 at one point. So we're definitely seeing some adjustment in the early game to make it better, and then some adjustment to the end game to get it closer in line with the other ones. Repeat Decree got a pretty big nerf early game. However, the late game nerf that it received actually is non-existent. Once we get to max rank, it's still going to be doing the same damage that it was doing. However, early game, it's probably not going to be the best option, given that it's lost 20% damage with the potency conduit. Next up, we have some changes to endurance conduits, specifically talking about the Shattered Soul conduit. They cut the increased healing that we get from these conduits in half, basically, throughout all of the amp. This is a pretty heavy-handed nerf, I think. I'd like to see these numbers increased by like 2.5 across the board, so we get closer to like 15% effectiveness at the end. But what this does do is it allows us to have more options when it comes to endurance conduits and a lot more meaningful decisions. This conduit was just better than the other options at the rate that it was before. So with this change, it may lead to some more decision making for demon hunters, which I think is pretty good. Then lastly, we're going to talk about the biggest change, especially for those people that actually want to play Night Fae Demon Hunter, which is probably a very few amount of you, but It's looking like right now, Night Phase probably going to be the best damage throughput and probably going to be one of the best in PvP. Unnatural Malice, for those of you that don't know, is the potency conduit for the hunt, which is the Night Fae Covenant ability. How the Night Fae Covenant ability works is it does like 400-ish% attack power in a strike, and then it does 400% attack power in a dot on up to 5 things that it hits while getting to that target. The target is included in those 5 things, I believe, if you don't hit 5 things before hitting the target. And what this potency conduit does is it increases the damage of the strike portion of it. So the strike portion itself is being increased by 25%, up 5% from where it was before, and then all the way up to 60%, where it was only at 48% before. So the strike aspect is actually doing probably as much damage as Sinful Brand is. And then on top of that, you get the dot too. So we're going to have to do some overall math. Before, I did some math about Sinful Brand in the hunt before these changes, after Sinful Brand was buffed to 50 or 520%. And Sinful Brand was still significantly better, and that was not including the haste factor. So I think these are very close to each other right now, and if anyone is better, it's going to be the hunt. And with that being said, that's all of the changes that we've seen so far. This is a very positive look for Demon Hunter. These are very good changes, and honestly, there's nothing that I'm really that upset about in this post. I think everything that they really did here makes sense, which, going back to my last video about the new legendaries, it's definitely a step up from where I was thinking they were going with the changes to Demon Hunter. They are actually looking to put the Covenant abilities closer together, so the options on choosing isn't that drastic between the two, which is great. And they're also making it so Blade Dance has a lot more viability, which was a big change that needed to happen as well. As always, there's going to have to be testing for all of this, and some of these things will change. But the overall outlook of this post is a lot more positive than what we've been seeing in the past. And I hope you all feel that way too. As always, if you like the video, leave a like. If you didn't like the video, F5, refresh, try it again. Maybe you'll like it the second time. Have a good one.